Thank you for joining us for this Idaho Environmental Forum Hot Topic. I'm Brandy Wilson, an Idaho Environmental Forum board member, and today I'm joined by fellow board member Braden Jensen and his colleague at Idaho Farm Bureau, Zach Miller. Hey, Zach. All right, Zach is going to give us some perspectives today on the impacts to Idaho agriculture from COVID-19, and in particular, what that means for our environment. Idaho Environmental Forum is a nonprofit, nonpartisan educational association whose sole mission is to promote serious, cordial, and productive discourse on a broad range of environmental policies affecting Idaho. And just like everyone else, we've temporarily suspended our typical in-person events, but we still want to bring you some thoughtful conversations about what's up in Idaho's environment. So I'd like to thank our sponsors for making these events possible, and you can find a list of our sponsors on our website at Idaho Environmental Forum, all one word, .org. So next, Braden, I'd just like to hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, Brandy. We appreciate that introduction. And again, we are appreciative of the opportunity to continue these conversations. Like Brandy said, I'm Braden Jensen with the Idaho Farm Bureau, board member of the Idaho Environmental Forum. I'm joined here with Zach Miller. He is our Director of Commodities and Marketing for the Idaho Farm Bureau Federation, and he's also a producer, a farmer and a rancher himself. So I think he can lend some pretty valuable information on this time during the coronavirus, how the COVID-19 pandemic is affecting Idaho agriculture. I'm going to give just a brief moment to Zach so that he can better introduce himself and also tell us a little bit about his operation.
Sure. Thank you, Braden. So as was mentioned before, my name's Zach Miller. I serve as the Director of Commodities and Marketing. And what that entails is my job within Farm Bureau being a general farm organization. We have touch points in every aspect of agriculture and try and work with that. My role is to pay attention to market impacts, market prices, and regulatory challenges within that structure. So I spend most of my time coordinating with other ag groups and trying to get a lay of the land, understand what is happening amongst ag country. As Braden alluded to, I'm also a partner in my family farm in St. Anthony, Idaho, in which we are a cow-calf operator, and we feed out our cattle all the way to harvest. So we're aligned most of the way through the livestock industry and beef. We also are a commercial potato operation, as well as raising barley and wheat, and then a variety of forages for our cattle as well. So with that, that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Thank you, Zach.
Wow, Zach, that's great.
We really do appreciate you coming and being willing to talk to us. And so right off the bat, Zach, I want to ask you, what are some of the impacts that we are seeing across the spectrum with the Idaho agriculture industry and the impacts from COVID-19?
Well, unfortunately, it's not good. I think what we've seen, we talk about COVID happening and we shut the economy down. And what we've seen in ag country is this is what happens when a just-in-time delivery schedule or logistics plan bumps up against Mother Nature and biology, and it's not a pretty picture. The analogy I like to use is imagine every type of agriculture industry within the state of Idaho is riding a bus, and that bus drove over a cliff. We've got some that have got gushing wounds out of their chest, and we've got others that have sprains and contusions. Literally no one has been unscathed from COVID, but the pain is not the same. We look at our livestock industry, our fresh produce industry, they're obviously experiencing the most amount of pain. Their products are very time sensitive. The shelf life of them is not long, and those are decisions that were made long ago. So they're feeling the most pain because our supply lines and distribution channels have been dramatically influenced. But even the ones that are more stable are still seeing some significant market disruption because as an economy, the numbers are about 49% of our food is eaten at home and about 51% is eaten out. Well, we've eliminated about 51% of our normal food choices. Every one of us is still eating 3 meals a day, but we have a logistics system that was set up to be almost half and half, and we shut half off. So it's been challenging to say the least, and we're seeing some severe market disruption and some market pain as a result of that.
Certainly. I think all of us have probably seen some of the headlines in the news, whether it's the dumping of certain commodities, and it's obviously very shocking for a lot of the public. But we also wanted to talk about some of the environmental ramifications that this whole pandemic is having, specifically as we're looking at the agriculture sector. So what are some of those potential ramifications, looking at this pandemic and this problem through that lens?
So when we speak environmentally, the good news is there's been no regulation changes or restrictions. And to my knowledge, there's been no immediate damage to the environment. The biggest loss or the biggest pain we're having in the environment is the fact that we devoted natural resources to grow a crop that has the potential now to go to waste. And that's not by design. That's just, again, Mother Nature. Some of these, like in my livestock business, I made decisions for my 2019 and 2020 crop 3 or 4 years ago in the genetics I made. And so I don't have the ability, if I was running a normal factory, I just stopped creating widgets. Well, I can turn off the supply, but the lead time was months, if not years out. And so that's where we're seeing the challenge. If I speak about livestock specifically, since we're such a large dairy and beef state, we haven't run into the livestock euthanasia that we're seeing in some of the others, which is fortunate for us. That's a heart-rendering discussion that I wouldn't want to have or have to see happen. So the biggest environmental impact we're seeing, like I said, is we're losing the efficiency we've gained. One of the recourses of having too much supply short-term is we've changed the diets. We've changed the caloric intake of a lot of our animals, meaning we've lessened them. So we've put them on a salad diet when they were on a bodybuilder diet before. And that really doesn't have a lot of impact to health. In fact, it's great for health of animals, but it means that an animal that might have taken 200 days to be finished, it might take them 300 days to be finished now. But at the same time, they're going to eat that many more pounds of food. They're going to drink that many more gallons of water, and that's not going to come back. So our efficiencies, our carbon footprint per animal, per unit of protein, are getting a lot larger. And that's always unfortunate. In agriculture, we've worked so hard, especially in a desert environment, to make every drop count. And while we're still doing it, it's not economically feasible, and it's not a best practice because it's not cost effective, but it's the only option we have. I'm sure you've all seen, a lot of our processing capability has been dramatically reduced because of employees coming down with COVID. So it's the best worst scenario to maintain the ability to sell that product and make that product available. But the lag time gets longer, and so the resource drain gets greater per annum. And we want to get back to what we were beforehand, where we were a lot more efficient in our use of our natural resources.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've definitely seen how efficient the Idaho producer can be over time, and we've seen that those efficiencies definitely come out. And it's unfortunate that we see things having to be adjusted, I guess, during this time as well. So Zach, what are some of the things that growers and food businesses, food processors are doing to help, I guess, reduce that risk? And when we're talking about risk, I mean, that could be we can go down many different roads that way. But sure. What do you see?
So we're seeing some shifting. I'll use potatoes as an example. Potatoes are a lot more of a perishable crop than, say, our cereal grains. So right now within the state, we're seeing a reduction. This year, the crop should be reduced. A lot of growers are reducing the acreages of their most perishable products, because those tend to be, and if I could make an aside, if there's ever been a time to validate the importance of, I don't want to say home ec, I know there's a different one, but home arts, to learn how to cook, it's become very apparent that the American consumer does not know how to cook a nutritious meal anymore. Because we've seen all these stories of fresh produce and vegetables being plowed under. It shows just how much of our society relies on the restaurants to get a nutritious meal, which is good that that's an avenue for it, but we've got to do a better job of educating ourselves of how to cook a nutritious meal at home, which includes leafy greens, healthy proteins, things like that. So that's just an aside I wanted to throw out there. But going back, what we're seeing is a flight to safety for most farmers. They're looking at what has the longest shelf life. So we're seeing an increase in cereal grain planting, more barley, especially more wheat. Again, apparently we can eat macaroni and cheese and ramen noodles, but we don't know how to make a really good Caesar salad. So we're seeing acreages shift, which creates more safety. We can store grains for an almost indefinite amount of time, but an asparagus stalk has a very short time. Potatoes, even that. We're trying to make sure we're not in as tough a shape as some of the other states, and we're trying to make sure that we don't get these bumps of when this coming year's crop comes due and we still have last year's crop available, and that's when we run into food wastage. Right now, we're being as proactive as possible to avoid that dire scenario, at the same time of not running the risk, which we built ourselves previous to, of avoiding hunger. And that's just some of the challenges we run into. We don't want to have hunger, and that's why we planted what we have in the past. But as I said, our shifts have changed in consumption and distribution channels. So we're seeing a lot of that. We're also seeing, as I mentioned before, we're looking at the horizon of our animals. We're seeing a lot of producers are culling. Dairies are drying up cows. They're focusing on their most efficient animals and trying to cull out some of their less effective animals. And so that's creating some short-term challenges. Long-term probably will be more effective. But every producer every day is looking at two things. They're looking at their resources and they're looking at their balance sheet. And they're trying to find the way to keep both of those as healthy as possible, which is causing them to look at horizons and timeframes and planning structures that are sometimes in dichotomies of each other. They're planning the most safety, not the most profitable crops, but just trying to hold on and protect themselves, which in turn infects and protects the environment. Food wastage for someone who's in agriculture has got to be one of the most heart-rending and painful experiences when you've put months, if not years, into a product to run the risk of not being able to see it actually being used. Waste is truly a waste. And from an environmental perspective, all of our members see themselves as stewards of the land, and to ask the land to produce something that then didn't go to a beneficial use is the hardest thing. And so our members, our growers, are working very hard to avoid that as much as possible in the state of Idaho, and I'd say throughout the state and nation.
Absolutely. So
Yeah,
Zach,
absolutely.
what can individuals and businesses do? I mean, how can our audience, our listening audience, how might they be able to help at all in this situation?
Well, it sounds like we all need to learn how to make salad to start with.
Yeah,
but
I really think so. I always thought, we know that potatoes have, for example, when we're the potato state, we know historically there's been civilizations and societal groups that have used that as the majority of their nutrition, and it's kept them healthy for a long time. And yet we see potato sales are faltering because we eat more potatoes through food service than we do at home. So number one, I would say, and this is a little bit cliche, but if you don't know how to cook, go on YouTube and learn how to make a nutritious meal tonight using multiple different ingredients. Use that 5 food groups, and let's get back there. But let's use some of these most perishable products. Our leafy greens, our potatoes, our vegetables and fruits are truly our most nutritious, and then pair that with a healthy portion of protein, whether it be dairy or beef or both, and have a good meal. And the second thing I would say is our logistics system is so specialized, and we've done such a good job of trying to eliminate waste at every avenue that it's really hard, nigh impossible, for a yogurt plant to convert to fluid milk. They just can't do that. The cost and the time during this pandemic is just challenging. So the other thing we really need to do is avoid the propulsion or the fear and the food hoarding, because we run into more food waste. More food gets thrown away than almost more food today in the United States gets thrown away than it does actually eaten. So avoid the compulsion to hoard. Don't buy what you don't know how to use, but at the same time, could there be a better time to explore what the local grocer has to offer and your food palette, and take a few risks in the kitchen and try something new? And especially the more locally produced, the most locally sourced is going to have the shortest logistic tail, and so it's going to have the least ability to be disrupted by the food service. Now, some of the things we don't grow in Idaho, but if you have the opportunity to buy something locally grown, and just support your local grocer. Just don't buy a whole carton of any one thing. Buy a week's worth of needs and continue social distancing, but keep eating. Eat a variety of different products, and just like Winston Churchill, just keep calm and carry on. But explore your horizons at the same time and eat some very delicious and healthy Idaho agricultural products.
There you go.
That's perfect. Well, thank you very much, Zach. We really do appreciate that perspective and that insight. I think that's some really good counsel, and again, a very good vantage point to look at how these impacts from this COVID-19 pandemic is affecting a big sector of the Idaho economy, the Idaho ag industry as a whole, and then looking at it through the lens of the environment as well. So thank you again, and Brandy, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Braden and Zach, for joining us today. It's really interesting. And, so often we think about food waste and all of the, water and inputs and everything that go into that and the background of it. And it's something that people talk about a lot, but we don't often take personally. And I think you're just absolutely right on, Zach, that this is an opportunity for us to look at our own food waste and how we can improve that and how we can better use the resources that we have in the kitchen and to be adventurous and try some new things that maybe we haven't tried before, explore some new aisles in the produce section, right? So thank
Absolutely.
you. Yeah, so thank you so much for joining us. And I just want to thank our viewers today for joining us for this hot topic. And if you'd like to hear more of these, please send us your topic ideas and we'll follow up on those. We'd love to hear from you. Just send us an email at ief@idahoenvironmentalforum.org. And then please join me also in thanking our sponsors for this event. Thank you so much. We'll chat again soon. Take care.